everybody. We got some NHL parents on the show today. Tom and Ellen Atkinson, the parents of Cam Atkinson, who plays for the Philadelphia Flyers, gave us just one of the best interviews we've ever had on the show. I'm not going to lie to you, about their journey as parents of 5 boys, having a life, and the unique things along their journey that allowed their son to get to the NHL. Also, really proud to tell you, we've got a new title sponsor partner on this show. NHL Sense Arena is joining us as the title sponsor of Our Kids Play Hockey. So moving forward, we are going to be proudly Our Kids Play Hockey, powered by NHL Sense Arena. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is a virtual reality ability to practice the game. Goaltenders use it, players use it. We're going to be sharing a lot of information about it moving forward. Also, as part of the show, as a loyal listener, you get a pretty awesome discount on signing up for Sense Arena. You can use the code HOCKEYNEVERSTOPS at sensearena.com. If anything, just head there to check it out. This is something that's been growing in the game for a while, and it really gives your kids the ability to practice virtually a lot, and the benefits have been proven to be clear. So again, I'll let them do the speaking for their product on their website, because we're going to do plenty of it on the site, on our stuff, and within our podcast. But really proud to be partnering up with NHL Sense Arena here at Our Kids Play Hockey. Okay, without further ado, let's get you this episode with Ellen and Tom Atkinson and the journey of getting one of their kids to the NHL. Here we go. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, now powered by NHL Sense Arena. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined as always by my favorite line mates, Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano-Burns. And today we are joined by the parents of an NHL player many of you know, Cam Atkinson, who currently plays for the Philadelphia Flyers. But what you may not know about Tom and Ellen Atkinson is that they are the parents of 5 boys, all who have played hockey. Tom and Ellen met in Vancouver before moving to the East Coast, where Ellen is from, where they started their family. Ellen is the owner of Consign Designs, which she has owned for 18 years, and Tom runs finance operations for a private hedge fund in Manhattan. And while we all know as parents we have our quote-unquote real jobs, hockey runs in the blood for this family. For all you listeners who have been asking us for another episode with parents who have successfully navigated the road to the NHL, this one's for you. Tom, Ellen, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for being here. You know, I want to start with this question. We speak a lot on this show about the values of youth hockey, but I know that all of us who are parents in the game wonder, what does it really take? What kind of sacrifices and determination from both the player and the parents does it take to have a child get all the way to the NHL? I know at one point of your lives, you had kids on 4 teams at once. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the hockey journey as parents and the 5 boys that you have raised successfully? I'll put it that way.
Go ahead, Ellen. I know you can't wait.
It was all a blur, let me tell you, but it took a team, and Tom had to be a huge part of all this, because 4 kids at one time were on a team. We were so lucky that we belonged to a small little private skating club that backed the games up on the weekends. The mites, squirts, peewees, bantams, one played right after the other. So we were literally on the road when they were very small, watching 4 games at the least amount, 4 games a day.
Wow. Every
Saturday and then every Sunday, back to back. It also, we also had the help of others that if we had to go in 2 different directions, they would help us too. But quite honestly, when they were young, we were together back to back at each arena throughout Connecticut, mostly, watching games. And I mean, Tom was a coach usually of 1 or both. I mean, every other year, our Cam and Tommy played together. So that was a blessing, because then it was down to 3 back-to-back games each day. But yeah, it was crazy. That was our weekend. Every weekend we were together as a family. Everyone came with us, all the boys, and that's what our life consisted of.
Right. Crazy. Let's just
Crazy.
throw some advice out there for parents who are going through the same thing right now and feeling pretty chaotic in their lives. And it's kind of hard to see the bigger picture when you're in it in the moment.
Yeah.
You really both, you have to, as a family, enjoy it. When we first moved here from Vancouver, we had no children. And I was asked to coach at Greenwich High School varsity team, which I think I did for 11 years. And
Mhm.
Ellen would come to all the games. And as the kids were smaller, they would, come to the games with us as well. On Sundays, I was always taking them as little kids to the ice rink and skating with them. And then as they started to develop, then I had to branch away from that and coach them individually. But logistically, Ellen could be going in one direction and I could be going in another. We'd go up to Lake Placid, and fortunately, I did the Pee-wees and I think the squirts one year because the coach wasn't there. And they were able to schedule me like I was getting off one rink to another rink. And at one point, this is kind of comical, we were playing Chris Atkinson. I'm not sure if you know them, from New Jersey. There was two Atkinsons and we had two Atkinsons. And those two were very good and our two were very good. And it was Atkinson from Atkinson to Atkinson to Atkinson on the
Yeah.
it was great. But those are the experiences that we would go to these tournaments and be able to experience the community, especially in Lake Placid when I coached the Junior Rangers Pee-wee Major team for 2 years up for the NHL division. So
Right.
we were able to get a lot of really good life experiences. The kids would get billeted out in some situations, but the team effort from us and Ellen and myself being able to buy into it and really you got to have both parents that want to do it. Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, we did not have a girl, so not sure she'd be playing hockey or figure skating or doing something different. So we were all kind of in the same sport arena, which was good.
Mhm.
It's funny you guys mentioned this. Mike and I and Chris, we're all nodding our heads for those of you listening to this, and for the parents listening. We understand the divide and conquer mentality that it takes, especially when you have multiple kids in the game. And this starts with just 2 kids, right? When you have 5 kids, it gets crazy. The other quote we've spawned on this show that I think our audience really resonates with is that you're not crazy. It's the hockey world that's crazy.
The hockey parents, not the coaches. The hockey
Yes.
parents are crazy.
They can be crazy.
Yeah.
I wanted to move on to this before we dive into kind of Cam's journey into the league, because you guys are proud parents and it's very obvious of all your children. And one of the aspects of your kids' development that I definitely wanted to talk about was the awareness of burnout and mental health. You told us actually that Cam at one point was being invited to a USA hockey camp, which is a really prestigious thing, but it was clear that it needed a break. I was wondering if you could share that story and any others that you have about the importance of taking breaks and being mentally fit.
That's an interesting story because it turned around in a way. He loved lacrosse. He was very good at lacrosse as well.
He also
and-
liked vacations.
Yeah, he did like vacations. That's correct. And the US development camp wanted Cam to go play for Team USA, which he did numerous times. But this was more of him getting an opportunity for exposure.
Right.
And he said that he didn't want to go. He said, I need a break. And we said, that's fine. And we took a break and he kind of got boycotted a little bit.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry.
it was-
What age are you talking about? I'm just trying to figure out
What-
about
What
how old was
age?
he? Yeah.
He might have been 10 years, 11, maybe 12.
Oh, that
Wow.
young. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty young. Maybe
He
13.
might have been a little older than that. I should have asked him, but he was
Yeah.
definitely under 15.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were very disappointed, which
Mm.
came around in a year after that, but which turned out to be very good because Team USA came to meet with me and apologized for what had
Wow.
transpired because he totally was like off the radar. And he
Huh.
and he was good enough to be on that radar.
Yeah, that's I think that's two things, right? Number one is the old adage: if you're good enough, they'll find you, right? If you're good enough, and obviously you as a family have to read that and say, well, if we burn him out and he's done, and he's not helping Team USA, he's not helping himself
Right.
as an individual, and he's not helping his
Yeah.
teammates. You know, we talk about this a lot on the show, is that refreshing, piece. I mean, one of the things I loved about the Atkinson family, I coached at Immaculate High School for 11, 12 years. So we played against Greenwich a lot. And I remember the boy, I'm like, Jesus, is there any Atkinson not on a team here? I said, so,
We got a lot of that. There's more than one of them, so keep your head up.
It's a broadcaster's nightmare.
It just wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. But I think it's like, just to watch his journey, because we're in, I mean, if the audience, doesn't know, you're in the world of Pacioretty and Quick, and like, there's like all these kids that, and when you listen to the stories of like the New Canaan Winter Clubs and the Greenwich Clubs and the Dorothy Hamill rinks, it was intense. I get it. You guys played a very intense hockey schedule, but the free play and the opportunity just to be the big fish in a small pond, and having the life balance of vacations and other sports, lacrosse and baseball and soccer. Like,
Right.
I just think that era in that time with all these kids that have really developed, was really, really prevalent. And obviously, maybe you guys could speak to that a little bit about, not even the pressure, but the non-pressure of saying, hey, Cam wants to play lacrosse this spring, and the kids want to do these other sports. Do you think that was just because of the community you were in, or is it because he was so good at hockey? Everybody's like, well, listen, let's back off this kid a little bit and let him do whatever he wants to do.
Right.
I
Or
think
maybe
everybody-
you saw some signs too that were showing that say, ooh, maybe we ought to step back and just let them be a little freer and not so intense with hockey.
It was all him. I mean, he requested it, and we honored it, or just accepted it. And
And there
interesting
was
enough,
pressure, by the way, there was pressure from
pressure.
coaches. I mean, in
Yes.
some cases, the lacrosse coach said it's us or hockey. This particular one, we didn't have a ton of money when the kids were little, and our only vacation was in August. We would go to Ocean City, Maryland with my entire family. And it meant so much to all the boys. And Cam was going to miss it that summer because of this tournament. And he's like, I don't want to miss my one and only vacation. But going back to the pressure, there was a little bit of pressure for the kids. I used to fight it all the time. I mean, coaches were like, we have practice on Halloween night. You are not going trick-or-treating. And I'm like, yes, they are. They are going trick-or-treating.
No, we did.
I mean,
We moved our practices to earlier, remember?
we would go, yeah.
Well, I think
So they would-
I think that's my point, Ellen, is that that's you as the parent. That's your job.
Yeah.
Your job
Yeah.
is to say, whoa, I'm the consumer. These are my children. Like, I get it, and I was that coach too. I was like, listen, you got to be here and you got to be at practice, and we talk on this episode or on this show a lot about before kids and after kids. And when I was a 23-year-old high school coach, I'm like, there was no other thing going on in the world but my team. Like, I'm like, what do you mean I can't tell you we have practice at 2:00 in the afternoon, that we have practice tonight at 7? I can't just throw that at you, because people are just navigating the world. And I think when you have kids, and obviously you guys went through it as a, Tom as a coach without kids, and all of a sudden now you have kids in the system, it really becomes an eye-opening experience to say, oh, geez, I do have to give them Halloween. I do have to give them prom, the dance nights. I do have to give them the family vacations. Now, not every single weekend, for 26 weeks, but you have to have that balance, or we just lose these kids. We lose these great athletes.
But you got to admit that's hard to do. There's a lot of pressure on parents that, well, if your kid doesn't make it Halloween night, he's not going to play the next game. Or if he doesn't pick lacrosse over hockey, that's it. His lacrosse career is done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure on parents to cave and to give into that.
And a lot of parents absolutely do. But the parents that understand or listen to their children, which we need to do, really changes that decision, which I believe it may have taken me more time than you, because you're always like, let everybody play. No one wants to play for you and sit on the bench. It's got to be fun.
Right.
And you bring up the skating club, you bring up, the winter club, all those. I had all those guys on the team. I had Ben Smith, I had Max Pacioretty, I had Cam, Johnny Quick. So I show up to a tournament and they're all in prep school. And Mike, you'll love this story. So I show up and we go up in some man's plane that was able to get certain kids. And you know what schools are like, prep schools? You're not getting out on Friday. Fortunately, John Gardner understood and allowed us to go. We went up with 5 kids and Johnny Quick. We show up and the ref comes over and goes, dude, you can't play with 5 kids. I go, can I play? He goes, yes, but do you want to? I go, watch Johnny Quick in net. We beat these guys. I had Sean Backman, Cam, Tommy. And literally it was so much fun. The ref comes over and goes, I've never seen anything like this. But Cam fortunately got to play with some really elite friends, and he's still really good friends with, like, Pacioretty. Patch is, from New Canaan, we're in Greenwich. Downing's there, Ben Smith, Ellie, who was Nick Bonino. I mean, all these guys.
Yeah, so it's funny.
Shattenkirk.
My son plays a lot of like NHL 24, and he has a team of all Fairfield County players, and they beat everyone. They win the Stanley Cup every year, just with Fairfield County kids. So I think it's
with 5 players on the ice.
No, that's awesome, and that, I don't know, that maybe that says less about you as a coach, but I think it's
exactly. I'm a good recruiter.
But what hell of a recruiter, no doubt about it. But I think, but again, those are like, when I look at these players, and I'm in a good situation because I actually know these guys, right? And I watch, like, dude, that's the Snapple Express years and all these other times, and the Comforts and the people I work with, like, these, for the most part, like, these are really well balanced, energetic, positive families and kids. Like just, again, does it help that their players were elite athletes? Probably. Only because there was a lot less pressure than the other parent that's push. You're like, listen, you can take a day off. The coach is going to kind of give you a little leeway. But to your point, like, when these prep school kids, like, they don't care. They don't care how much money you have. They all are in the same boat. That's the whole idea of going to these institutions. But I think you guys, I think finding that balance and finding the way to put kids together, I don't know. I just love that, the way those kids inspired each other. And I mean, listen, I would have loved to see those practices, because they must have beat the hell out of each other. I mean, those guys really compete.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun with it. There was, and Cam got to play, especially when I did, because remember, the Pee-wees changed the birth year when I was coaching the Junior Rangers team. So Cam went up with the 88s, and then it skipped over to the 90s. And I remember showing up there with a bunch of kids from Buffalo because they couldn't play because the Buffalo and the Hartford Whalers were having an issue over territory. So believe it or not, I had Patrick Kane on the team, but his grandmother got very sick. So I had all those Buffalo kids, and we showed up and played Detroit Little Caesars. Cam's this big. These guys, I had the Bennett brothers. I had all these monsters. It got into a huge brawl because I didn't realize Buffalo and Detroit Little Caesars hated each other. and Cam's like, I'm not going on the ice. So I had these 89 birth years with these big 88 kids, and we ended up winning the tournament on the other side of it. So there were great experiences, and it was always fun. We always seemed to be going out for dinners or go-karts or going and playing laser tag or doing something that, whether you're in Ottawa or whatever tournament, we always made fun of it.
But just going back to burnout,
right?
I mean, when we were at the skating club for many, many years, and when I look back, it was really, really special, because when we moved the boys to Snapple, which is the team that you just referred to, Mike, one of my sons burnt out so fast, and I'm imagining that's what's going on right now. I don't know, but I'm thinking most of our teams were in the Greenwich Skating Club, they were local or they were easy to get to within an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. When we moved to Snapple, all of my kids were in different directions, and they were going to Philly, they were going to New Jersey, Connecticut. They were going all over. That one of my kids said, I'm done. I am not sitting in a car one more Friday night in traffic to get to a game for a weekend and come home on, like, I'm done. I don't know how Cam and Tommy continued, but that ruined us. So I have a feeling a lot of youth hockey now is like that. They're not staying within Connecticut or New York.
Well, they're all the all-star team. They're all all-star teams. I just drove 10 hours from Pittsburgh last night. So I mean, I think
insane.
it is
nice job, Mike.
I don't think we could have done that, Tom. I mean, we were
it is
so
a different-
fortunate.
We did do it, Al, for a while.
Not with the skating club.
No,
Yeah,
not with the skating club.
But I think that's
away from there.
To Ellen, to your point, it's, and we talk about this a lot here with parents, is that rush to that doesn't have to happen at 9 and 10 and 11 years old.
Right.
Like that, it doesn't have to happen. Like you could find, you could find the same crappy 10-year-olds to play right down the street in Darien than you can in, Westchester, PA. And I think that's, or Ontario or Toronto.
Yes.
I think it becomes this churning money business model. And we talk about the business piece of it all the time. I know we want to get to Cam's career, but he's on the back. Right now. We don't, he's already
this is great. No, the audience is going to hold on. Don't worry.
But I think this is like one of these things where you as parents right now going through that and saying, oh, geez, if I was in 2024, could I have done this with 4 kids? And, could we have split, all these families up? And we see it all the time. And I call it like the Cams of today are just making it through the gauntlet. Like they're just fine. Like, look at you. You got 1 of 4, right? And it's like, and I'm sure they're all tremendous athletes, and good at everything they do. And it's just like, who can have the luck to get through the gauntlet and then make it through? And then it does become, I mean, it's the funniest thing is like when it gets to Boston College, right? It's easier. Like when you
was the most fun ever. Boston College was
right. But all of a sudden it becomes back to the Greenwich Skating Club.
Yes.
Local play on the ice every day. An intense, fun atmosphere. A more sane schedule. But it's funny how everything we do to get our kids to Boston College is counterintuitive to development at 9 and 10 and 11 years old.
It is.
And we just look at it and say, well, this kid made it. Yeah, but thousands didn't. Thousands have failed.
So Mike, you're saying that the key to getting a kid in the NHL is just to have more kids, right? That's what it sounds like.
You play the percentages. You got to play the percentages.
If you have 27 kids that all play, there's a good chance, actually there's still a low chance and none will make it.
Are you saying Mike has 27 kids?
Sometimes I feel like it.
Mike has hundreds of kids as a coach. A couple observations here I've noticed. Last year I saw, I won't say the tournament name, they have since changed this, but they had some elite teams travel to 5 different destinations around the country to play the same opponents.
And I was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's insanity to me. And again, to credit to that tournament, they have changed it now. Okay, but it's and it was kind of touted as exposure. And I'm like, okay, if this was 1985 where there was no internet, maybe, but we don't need that today. And it sounds like to me, just listening to what both of you were saying, is that you were able to put an equal amount of effort into building them, not just as hockey players, but as people, right? And it's so important that we develop good people because that's who become good hockey players. And if they don't become NHL players, that's okay too. I think one of you alluded before about the business nature of youth hockey. And I think what's happened is that there's a huge bubble now around the business aspect and the elite aspect and the all-star aspect that we've forgotten about developing these young kids as kids. And I think that especially I want to impress this on our audience, and please tell me if you disagree, you spent the time on building them as people as much as the hockey player, if not more. The fact that you, and again, I wanted to say this earlier, and this is so cool. This is why I brought up the USA Hockey thing. We say all the time on this show, there really is not one tournament or one game or one event that's going to make or break your career, right? There are breakout events where your kid may get there and show up and it's like, wow. But the truth is, if your kid is great enough, if your kid is motivated enough, it's not based, you can't base it on one thing.
No.
And I also love, I wanted to bring to light this too, Tom, that you said this, that USA Hockey came to you and basically, you know, made amends. I think that's worth mentioning again as well, right? Because at the time Cam was coming up, I'd say that was the dawn of the mental health kind of time period of like, oh, maybe it was maybe this is important time period. Whereas now
he
we
didn't
know it
make
is.
Team Connecticut that year because of it. It was like it was so silly that we just backed off of it, and then it all turned around. And I will tell you, I've become close with the guys at Team USA because Cam has played, you know, with a bunch of the guys over in Europe and so forth. I've gone to 2 of those tournaments, and those guys are serious guys that they're all about the development. But I think now they see the growth. I mean, it's one thing to have a good hockey player, but if you don't have a good athlete, student, good person besides being an athlete, it all doesn't go together.
Right. Right. I love that we're talking about that because I think a lot of people miss that. You know, in the younger youth development now, where Mike and I are seeing all the time, that there's a tremendous amount of skill, but there's not a lot of hockey IQ. There's not a lot of, you know, emotional IQ. And we plead with everybody that, you know, this has to be part of what you're doing, right? You have to make your drills fun. You have to make them enjoy it, especially at a young age. Go ahead, Mike. We will move on to Cam at some point. I promise.
I'm just saying, like in the early 90s, like when I started Snapple Express, it was really because there was a void. There was nothing. Like
that's
it was like
how I know you, Mike. You know that. I cut Cam.
I cut Cam. I think when he was 11. No, I'm only kidding. I was
good decision. We had a great summer that summer.
Yeah, right, exactly. I had all the crappy kids, but I think it's like I think it's you know, it's one of these things where but it was a void. But now everybody is that. Like there's no doubt that it's in the late 80s and early 90s of the hockey world in the East Coast and Fairfield County in New York. There was a void in that, but now everybody's become that. Good, you know, and I think it's bad. I mean, I reflect back and say, well, how do you evaluate 200 kids on a sheet of ice in 15 minutes? You can't do it. And you know, and then I think the other point of that is instead of looking for the person that's a good athlete, we were looking for the best athlete. Who cares what the kid was like? Who cares what the parents were like? Who cares if this kid was a psychopath or mom and dad were crazy? Like now and USA Hockey's actually really done a great job of identifying the person first and then saying, well, let's inject the talent in. Because now I can work within the team, I can work within travel, I can work within all of these other aspects. And long term, this is the person I want representing our country. This is the person I want representing my team. And I think you guys probably saw that more so evidently in like your process going through Avon Old Farms and Boston College. Like when I look at a guy like Jeff Hamilton and I talk to him and say, well, what was your experience like at Avon Old Farms? And he's like, well, that was where I became a man. Like that's where I learned all the things that I wouldn't have learned just being in a locker room and on the bench. And all these athletes have to go through that maturation process. Some do it at 15, some do it at 19. And it's just, you know, well, it's a waiting game of saying it's a long-term athlete development world. Obviously, there are gifted children. Caitlin, actually, our producer, shared a social media post just recently about, you know, when social life and girls and cars and when they get in the picture, it changes everything too, right? So I think, you know,
that's why we sent them to Avon. Get them away from all that risk.
Right. But I think it's like one of these things where I think what you guys have done in the story, you know, that's a success is that watching the boys, you know, kind of go through and be people first. And I'm sure people that are around you know that, like they know, okay, these are good people. Oh, by the way, that kid plays in the NHL. Like, you know, and I think that's just a byproduct of who they are.
Mike, another interesting thing, if you guys do get to know Cam and all our boys, Cam's always acceptable. He's always accessible. We have a foundation that gives back to veterans and so forth. Cam and Torts have obviously been friends away from hockey, and they're putting together to give a couple service dogs away. It's those kind of things that regardless of the hockey, but the community.
Mhm.
Being, you got to be a good person and you got to be accessible. I remember when Cam was younger, some lady came up to me and she's like, "What kind of skates is Cam using? My son wants to get the same skates." And one of the things we taught our boys was, you never know who's looking at you. You never know who's talking about you. So be careful what you say. Be nice to everybody, because I've never heard Cam said this, Tommy said that, you know, Steve or any of our boys, he said that about me. And I think if you get away from the chatter, the gossip, and all that other nonsense, which exists everywhere, I think it just makes him a better person. And last thing, Mike, get Hammy on the show. I'm good buddies with him.
We've been asking him. He's so camera shy. You know, he's such an introverted guy.
I'll torture him. Trust me. I talk to him a lot.
And I have to tell you, even watching Cam, he has great swagger on the ice. To me, it seems like he's always got a smile on his face. And when you watch him in the interviews, if he messes up, he owns up to it. He doesn't try and, blame everybody else or the situation. He'll say, "No, that was on me." So I really admire, you could tell he's just got such great character, somebody for our kids to look up to. What was it like, his first NHL game for you guys? I get a chill just thinking about what it would be like in your shoes. What was it like when you first saw him step on the ice as an NHL player?
Tom?
Well, interesting enough, Cam broke his tib fib, and I'm just going to weigh into this story a little bit. And when he was at Avon, and he literally fought his way, and John Gardner gave him a key to get into the rink at midnight, late at night. And he worked hard to get back on that ice. John Downing was a surgeon, or orthopedic surgeon for the New York Jets. And he ended up, and he had 5 boys, I believe. And Jack Downing played with us as well. Kids played hockey. John loved hockey. John passed away, and I was at the funeral, and it was the day that Cam was trying out for the Blue Jackets out of college. And I'm looking, and I want to correct me if I'm not saying this correctly, but looking for a psalm. Is it a psalm? Like they have all the numbers?
A psalm.
A psalm. I saw all of a sudden, and I'm looking everywhere. I saw 13, 13, 13, 13. He always was 13, 13. All these numbers came up. I've got a missed call when I'm in the funeral. I walk outside and he goes, "I made the team." So it just so happens I'm from Vancouver. My family owns the Chilliwack Chiefs, Langley Lords in British Columbia. Have owned it for 45 years. And I think that they played Vancouver, and they were playing against, and I'm thinking of the goalie at the time because he played at Boston College. Cam gets on the ice and scores
Snyder.
the first goal. Corey. So I meet Corey after. He goes, "Mr. Atco, I gave him an easy one to get him started." So what? And Elle, I think you were there. I think Tommy was there. Some of the boys. The
Blue Jackets flew us in, right, for the home game.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so exciting. And I fell in love with Columbus. And I won a couple of really big 50-50s there, which was really more fun.
I think Cam scored on that first game because I think he
did.
I think with the exception of him being hurt last year and one other year, I think he has scored in every first opening game.
Yes.
In his career.
So cool.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. But
yeah, it was so exciting.
Cam, he's amazed us from day one. I mean, the kid must have had a vision, or not even a vision, but he did it all on his own. I mean, he was determined. And, Tom and I would look at each other because this kid was so tiny. Even in high school, he played Ben Smith, in the
shadow Ben Smith.
The size difference was Ben Smith was double his size. And he amazed us. We had no expectations ever of any of our kids going to the NHL, let alone Boston College. Nothing. And I mean, he just kept
Yeah, know who believed
surprising
in him?
us.
Yeah, the most was Mike. I coach with Mike Backman. You know Mike, right?
Of course.
Of course. So Mike and I coach, and we had the Pee Wee or the midget majors, and Cam played on that team. And Cam scores the overtime goal. Puck bounces off him, goes in. Now he's an 89 playing with 86s. And I'm like, you know what, Mike? Mike goes, you have no idea what you have here. And I go, but look at your kid, Sean. He goes, my kid's an 86. Your kid's an 89. He goes, do you realize that difference? He goes, your kid's going to the show. And it was Mike Backman that honestly, still to this day, has so much love, support, and commitment to Cam as a younger player. And Cam does, when he's in town, he'll go help him, with his camps and things like that.
Well, it's so cool to have, so, and, we're a really unique area here on a podcast with hockey parents because they know what 89 and 86 actually means, right?
Yes.
That's the only way I know everybody.
So if you're tuning in from soccer or lacrosse, then you'll need to look it up. But
This
I think
is a non-age podcast.
Yeah, right. Just so you know. But I think, but having guys, and I think every community, that's what we look for. Like whether you're in Minnesota or Northeast or California, now in Florida, and the non-traditional hockey markets, you're looking at, you need guys like the Michael Backmans, that are around, that are professionals. Like they're not easy. They're hard. Like these guys are hard guys.
Chris Keeney.
That love their players. I think like Chris Gerwig, I think about him, like a guy like him is like a loving person, but he's hard and he's tough. And, when I see these kind of, these are the kind of people I love being around as a coach, and being in these director positions, because you can trust them that they're going to do the right thing, say the right thing, motivate the right way. And they're going to get the most out of their athlete, whether you're a tiny little, player that maybe has some potential, or, this big, massive, individual that people expect a lot out of you already. Right. So I think it's like, that's what's great about all these little hockey communities, is that you got to find those people. And I think, Cam would be the first one to say it, right? That, listen, I'm nowhere without those people. Like without those people pushing me. Yeah, it looks great where I am now, but all that, that diamond was built by all this pressure I had, positive pressure I had when I was a young,
Listen, he had Marvin, for God's sakes, Mike.
Well, I won't mention that. But yeah, but everybody, So you had the toughest. You had the toughest of the tough. You had the toughest.
Well, we're alluding to my next question here, which I think is important for the listeners as well. And Tom, I know you were his coach for many years, but I'm interested in what made the great or horrible coaches stand out, because I think a lot of times as parents, we're looking, well, who knows the game the best? And coaching is so much more than just knowing the hockey IQ, right? It's a big part of it, but it's really, can you express that? Can you communicate that in a way that it's retained by the player? Because again, I've always said, you can be the best tactician on the planet. If you can't effectively communicate, it's irrelevant, right? So what do you think from a development standpoint of all your boys, right? We're the best coaches, and why?
You know what? I coach them a lot. So I'm going to tell you, from my wife's standpoint, make it fun. And I mean this seriously, because I would have some kids that would come off the ice crying, and I would go talk to them, and they're like, I just want to play. So I think if you can make it fun, we would do a lot of skill set, but would do a lot of fun competitive skill set through cones, racing each other, doing things that if it's not fun, if work isn't fun, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm just telling you. And if you can, the coaches they've seen it all. And some coaches are different, but the coaches that got the most out of the kids were the ones that made the development fun. That's really what I would say.
I love No, listen, it sounds simple, but I think, and Mike said this earlier, like the younger version of me coaching, I don't think I understood that as much as I do today, right? Is that, you have to make this smiling. If you're not, it's a game. It's a game. You hear the NHL players say that all the time. It's a game. It's my job now, but it's a game.
Yeah. And to Ellen's and Tom's point about, them having to recognize that as parents, it's so hard for any coach to accept the fact that that's the way they're going to run their team, because there's so much pressure on them. Like, what the hell? You just having fun out here? Like, a lot of parents don't see.
I've gotten that. I've had people tell me that.
Yeah, like, well, these kids are having too much fun. And I joke around, like, even my little learn to play kids and stuff. I'm like, guys, if you're not, you're smiling out here, that's not a good thing, because we can't have you, we can't have you too much fun. This is hard work. This is supposed to be hard. But I think
hockey is zero fun, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all these guys are, when you look at the professional level, at any profession, it's got to be fun. You got to love coming to the rink. So, obviously, we've seen, and Cam's had, some tough coaches at the NHL level.
Yes.
And I think, but there must be some element of fun in there, though, because you couldn't do it.
Yeah. And also, I will tell you one of the things, and Cam will share this with you, the coaches, his NHL coaches, and, Columbus always struggled. He always stayed, he was always respectful. If someone was let go, he'd always reach out to them. And it really has played well, because even when those coaches get on other teams, they go out of their way to meet Cam in a hallway. Nice. And that is really cool to me for him.
Right. Yeah.
I imagine you're just as proud of that as him being an NHL player.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I could be more proud of that, to be honest with you.
That's
it's
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, to the parents listening, when you listen to Tom and Ellen, I think that's a really important point you both just made, right? Is that, when you're lost in having an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old, and, they're screaming or they don't want to wake up. Christy and I just talked about this yesterday, about just the joy, but the strife of having young kids, right? When it's all said and done, in terms of them becoming adults, there's two parents of an NHL player saying that I'm actually more proud of the type of person he's become than the NHL player he's become.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a note. Go ahead.
Just a little example. The other night, Cam was benched. He was a healthy scratch. To me, that's devistating. I want to kill. Like, I am so competitive. I'm like,
you didn't write an email about that? You didn't write an email?
No. I had to buy a new TV, though.
The way Cam handled it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He, with such dignity, like, I was texting him, and my outlook was so different than his, and I was so impressed with what he was saying.
Yeah.
He is just, it's hard, whether you're a kid or an adult. To be benched because you're not putting the goal in the puck in the net is devastating. Like, he can't be more hard on him. There's no one harder on him than himself, that he's not putting the puck in the net. Like,
and
he's
against his old team.
He's a natural goal scorer, and to be benched by the coach, who they have an outside love for each other. It's like, oh my God, how come he's doing this to Cam? Like, it's not like he doesn't want to score a goal. And Cam just is so reflective, and he's like, look, it's on me. I need to be better. And, I'll say some things to him that I'm not going to repeat, but he's like, no, Mom, you're wrong. Like, it's really like, I just am going through a bad time, and I just have to reflect and just keep trying as hard as I can. That's all I can do, is I can control what I can control. And it's just so impressive.
Well, you know how I feel when you yell at me.
What a great lesson.
You don't count. But I think that's a great, see, this is what I love, is that you have this perspective. Like, I'm sure you guys are more upset. Like, you're up there like, what the hell, we got to send an email. Let's call him. Let's find out what's going on. Like, I'm heated up, right? But I think, but the perspective is, well, do we need to be that heated up with an 8-year-old? And I think like, this is where that's the lesson, is like, we can't expect an 8-year-old to go back to mom and dad and say, no, I got it. Because the 8-year-old is just going to parrot the parent. Yeah. And I think so now I think the other side of this is being the parent, saying, hey, listen, the coach obviously has some differences. They want to get some motivation out of you. They clearly love you, or they like you, or you got to spin it any way you have to do it, right? You're on their team. And let's take some self-accountability and let's make this work, for you. Like,
Right.
how can we, and Luke talks about this all the time, like, how do you take that experience and make it a positive? And then now we have to do it in this pressure cooker of us as parents and kids.
Right.
And like, we're all self-centered. Like, we only care about our kid. We don't care about the team. We don't care about what the locker room's like. Like, it's always like, I laugh all the time. Like, I can't believe they don't name that person captain, or I can't believe they don't have this person. I go, you're not in that locker room. You don't know what that player's like. You don't know what that player does in practice. You're just watching it on TV. And I think, and you guys obviously have a different perspective. You're living it. But I think having, and it's okay for you to be emotional and pissed. But at the end of the day, the athlete has to take has to take that.
And here's how gracious he is, because I'm a reporter and I've had to throw the camera and microphone in front of athletes' faces who are pissed because of whatever happened in the game. And they can be rude and obnoxious and whack you away. But Cam, he had to face that camera and all those reporters asking him a question about his situation. And he was so gracious. And again, he said, that's on me. He took full responsibility. My heart was just being squeezed when I can't imagine what it was like for you, Ellen. But I was like, I can feel how difficult
and
it
he
was.
knew you were coming too. Trust me, he knew. The night before, I'm on the phone with him. He goes,
so unbelievably gracious. I was just, and I've been in those situations too with my kids where I don't understand why they get benched, why they're sitting, why they're not out there playing, and I want to wring that coach's neck,
Right.
And just like you just have to, you got to work through your emotions. You got to let the kids handle it, and let them figure it out, which is what Cam is doing. Yeah.
There's an old saying, you love the one that needs it the most. So you need to give the love to the ones that need it at the time they need it. And with 5 kids, you got to share a lot of love at different times. Some need it at some times. Ellen yells at the referees, for God's sakes. I mean, you should hear her downstairs.
Well, I do, but it's in the privacy of my own living room.
Yeah, I know, but I'm in the other room.
You're the only one that hears me.
I'll do something I rarely do on this show. The date is January 8th, 2024. And I don't know if you both know this, but I live in Philadelphia. So I've been watching Cam for his whole career. Now, you may know him a little better than we do, obviously. But my prediction is this, knowing the type of accountability he has, is that, as we said, he's taking that benching in stride. I have a feeling when he scores a goal, the floodgates are going to open. And I think
he's going to open up.
He's proven that many times in his career.
Yes.
And the reason I'm bringing that up is not because I want to, fact check me in 2027 and see what happened. The reason I'm bringing that up is because that is an aspect of a great player, right? Is that they can take the hit. And we see this in youth hockey all the time. The kid will take a hit, not be accountable. They can't recover. And as Mike said, this is your opportunity as a parent, right? To really look at the situation of, what do you control in this situation? What can you work on in this situation? Can you bounce back? And I'm going to take it a step further. This is not a hockey skill. This is a human skill. I have always said you are defined by how you respond to adversity, not the adversity that happens. Typically, you don't have a lot of control over the adversity. You have control how you respond to it. And I think that your son, and again, he's proven this over his entire career. This is not a new thing, is that when one goes in the net, the whole polarity of the situation is going to flip. And maybe John Tortorella knows that about him. Maybe he sees that about him.
He does, yes.
He does.
Right.
He knows him well enough.
Yeah.
He does.
And that's another aspect of great coaches, is understanding how to motivate a young player. And again, in youth hockey, it's got to be done a certain way. When you're getting paid, it's a job. You have to understand another way. Another, I only had 2 questions left. I wanted to ask this one about Cam too. I think this is an important one for the kids that listen to the show, right? Is that when he made the NHL, the work didn't stop. It wasn't, I've made it, I'm here. If anything, I'm sure he worked harder. So can you talk a little bit about the training aspect, the stuff that we don't see on television that keeps him becoming an all-star, a great player, and where he's at today?
So he had to, he worked with Mike Prentice in the summers. A lot of the NHL guys that come back to Connecticut, Mike, you know who Prentice is. And, he just started to get into more of a routine, get more into health, getting into treatments, stretching, learning how, because one of the things when he first made a pro, he was taken aside and goes, there's 84 games or 86 games, whatever it is. And the younger guys seem to get out of the gate for 20.
Yeah.
Lose some steam, and then some guys just fall right off and end up in the minors for a while just because you got to fill that role. So every year, unfortunately, now that when Cam's been in Columbus, he owns the Battery. So he's got his own ice, his own training facility. He's up early, and he's pretty gluten-free with his diet. He's really true to, his body and listening to his body, and nutrition is key for him. Working out and doing it early, not taking the month off after you're off, because that other month getting back into it is worse. So he doesn't start. He might take a week off, but I think nutrition, staying up on his health, and just training. He's
getting strong.
Getting strong. Yeah, but he's
and
not
putting weight on in the summer, putting weight on because a lot of weight comes off when they start the season.
That's an interesting perspective.
A good plug. He's a big gel stick guy, so I like him like that. But
you need some gel sticks, Mike?
No, I got too many from Lounsbury. Lounsbury sends me gel sticks. I go through those a lot with our kids. We're big. We're like so watching Cam, and the Battery is a great example actually of finding places that you could be not in practice and a non-traditional hockey related working out, but having a long-term view of development, like saying, okay, I really got to work on, like, I remember just, listening to interviews, just the gel stick was a good example of just saying, well, if I can add 5 miles per hour on my shot or shoot from 10 feet farther out, that's a couple of $1 million in my pocket. Like, if I can increase my performance, and now if we can start putting that down level by level, if you're 10 years old and you can just increase your performance just a little bit by understanding that if you're going to a tournament, that it can't be Chipotle and Taco Bell. It's got to be, getting up in the morning, having a routine, having a good breakfast, hydrating, staying, and like the kids, like I think most kids don't get is the whole process of after the game, and then the recovery process starting. Because when you're 12 and 13, you probably can get up and play and
eat a Big Mac.
But and you could do that. But when you're in college and now you're in pro and you're in, again, and I'm sure, they get a lot of resources, but they don't have those same resources given to them, when the season ends. Like during the season, it's probably much easier for him to maintain.
Mike, one of the things I want to bring up, and this is something I've noticed from pro athletes or really pro people, right, is the pursuit of perfection, knowing that it's not achievable and having that higher level goal, right, and that higher purpose that you really can't achieve, but in pursuing it, you achieve so much more than if you just try to, okay, I want to have this many goals this season. Right. Which I'm not saying is not a good goal to have. I'm just saying that infinite game, that the term I always like to use from that Simon Sinek book, if you end up pursuing the infinite game, knowing you can achieve it and you can accept that mentally, it's an amazing place to be in. Right. Because you're loving the journey. Right. And I think that's another thing we forget sometimes. And again, look, it happens to all of us in your life. There's things that happen that they knock you off course. Right. And it's hard. But again, going back to what we said earlier, it's how you respond to that.
So Lee, one of the things also that we've kind of haven't really touched on is life in general. These are young men. These are adults.
Yeah.
They're family men. They have children. They have wives. They've got dynamics away from the rink. Cam comes home. Natalie is an absolute rock star because honestly, you got to buy into what is my husband? What does our family need?
Right.
For everything, just because they're traveling a lot. And he brings the kids to Voorhees. He brings them to the rink. I got a call yesterday from Declan. They call me Googs, by the way, and Ellen's Gammy. I'm sorry, but that's our nickname.
Gammy and Googs. That's how we're going to rename the episode. It's Gammy and
Googs. So he's like, Googs, I got a big day tomorrow. And I'm like, well, what's going on? He goes, it's my first day of hockey. And he goes, it's something,
yeah.
and then he goes, and something else. I get to bring lunch to school.
Oh,
So Cam will get up and probably bring them to school, head over for the pregame skate today. You know, he gets to spend time with them. And I know how much those children, now they have Fallon, has changed his life.
Right.
And that's what people don't realize. These are real people with families that have kids that are sooner or later going to go through everything that everybody's listening to on this podcast in the next 10 years.
Right.
And it's cyclical. But to see how they as a family are with the family, it's amazing.
Yeah, I got to watch Max Pacioretty's son try it out with our brick team up at Stanford, and I was laughing watching him. I was watching him pacing back and forth kind of glass, and I'm just like, you know, hey, everybody's a parent at some point, right? And I think you're just watching your kid like, you gotta just, please do the right
Listen,
thing.
hey Max, if you don't like it, buy the team.
Right, get yourself in a better
I'll
spot.
say this too, that Tom, we do a lot of team building with our groups and in our businesses, and one of the things I coach coaches on is that if you had the same players, the same roster every season, I'd ask the question, do you have the same team? And I said the answer is always no, because life happens. And as you said, when you get to professional coaching, marriage, divorce, kids, injuries, parents, life happens. Right. And I love that you brought that up. And it also allows me to bring you on for another episode, which we maybe will do. But no, it's a good point, because I think, let's talk to the fans of the NHL listening to the show just very quickly. You see so little of these people's lives. And, when you work in the game, you start to realize that you get a lot of empathy. You see so little, but we are so judgmental on what they should be doing with their game, knowing absolutely nothing about the tactics, knowing nothing about what's going on in the locker room. And so I always try and kind of I always say fans are insanely important to the game. There is no doubt about it. But can you give a little bit of grace to the understanding that nothing about what's going on in that room?
You know what? Fans and parents are really the entertainment of the game.
Yeah. That's a book we're going to write.
We're writing a lot of books here. Do I have to underwrite this stuff?
No, that's where we come in. We're building a new business here right now. It's called Gads and Gammy's guide.
Googs and Gammy, huh?
Oh yeah. Last question from me. There are a lot of parents, obviously, that listen to this show, and let's be very realistic. We've all had that thought of, I just wonder if this kid of mine can do something in this game. Whether it's a positive thought or a negative thought. As two parents, again, of several boys, one who's made it to the NHL, had a very successful career. Speaking to the parents listening, any words of advice, wisdom for them about the journey as a whole?
Education first. That's what we went for. That's why when Cam could have gone to the development program, fortunately, we had the financial resources to send two boys to prep school. It was a hockey school for sure, and John Gardner really wanted the boys there. But on the same hand, when they wanted him to go to the development program, I'm like, guys, I want him to get an education. That's key to us. More importantly, he knew, I believe, as a freshman, he got a full ride to Boston College, I believe. So he knew very early. So that was really everything that we had hoped for our boys. Tommy went to business school at Boston College. They both played hockey. I mean, sometimes you just don't know. You can dream about it, but
I need to just say something, that you're correct with the older kids, high school, maybe late middle school. But I will tell you the struggles I had in elementary school, because I was the one that was taking the boys out of school on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And the amount of anger and pushback from the teachers and the principal, it wasn't easy. And all I kept saying in my own head and heart was that 2 hours of school, of sitting down in school, is not going to outweigh the experience and the learning that they're going to get with a team and travel and play, because it's all a learning experience. And I kept saying that in my head. Am I right? Am I right?
You got in trouble for that.
What's that?
Yeah, I did the same argument. My kids got detention, so I don't know.
Well,
that's my argument. You know, that's my wife's argument all the time back. Like, we go to Pittsburgh, it's like, okay, well, we got to go to the Andy Warhol Museum. We got to go to the Steel Museum. We got to go to the tram. We've got to go. We've got to go do these other things that when you're in there, you can't just sit in your hotel all day. But if you could come back, and I don't personally,
but
I wish teachers
100% right. And I always try to convince the teachers ahead of time, hey, look, we've got this term, but we're going to the hockey, museum. We're going to be seeing.
I wish more teachers would take. I wish more teachers would take that and say, okay, well, send me a paperback on the Andy Warhol.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
so
Ellen,
teachers, if you're listening, ease up on us, okay?
Yes. And the game you're talking about, believe it or not, it was for the New York Rangers junior team going to Pee Wee, Quebec. We were playing at Madison Square Garden.
That's a pretty big tournament.
The Islanders.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was just one of the situations.
But that was a big one that we got in a lot of trouble for.
Yeah. I mean, I had teachers tell me, because Cam had a language deficit, believe it or not, you would never know it when he was in school. And his speech therapist would sit there and tell me, if you don't start reading to him, or if he doesn't take books with him, he'll never get into college. He'll never improve on his language. And it would kill me. Like, it would kill me. As a mother, I felt so deficient. I was exhausted, by the way, with so many kids, but so whether we had hockey or not, I was exhausted at night. So I didn't really read to them all that much.
Ellen, look, to your point, this is all about balance to me, I think, at the end of the day. I think that's what you're both saying, is that, look,
yes,
I like some of these old cliche phrases. It takes a village to raise a person. And I think, Christy, Mike, you said it too. It's like, what I like to do is I go to the teacher in the beginning of the year and I say, look, my kid plays hockey, and there's probably going to be a few dates where we come to you and say he's got a tournament. What I'd like to do is work with you on those dates to find a way to continue his education, but he also has to live his life. And I'll be, now he's in elementary school right now, so I haven't had any issues yet. Okay.
It's coming.
I know it is.
Oh, you wait.
I think there's an aura of, trust your gut a little bit with this. I think, and again, it's also balanced. If your kid's really struggling in school, you have to have that conversation, right? Because adversely, I'm not for rewarding them with hockey if they're not dedicated to their schoolwork. Right. But that, again, that's not the scenario we're talking about here.
But Alan, I appreciate you being so honest here. I mean, it wasn't easy. You had a lot of struggles. You had some battles.
Is it difficult now? Is it more difficult now? Because back then, the problem was they seem more concerned with, listen, you're taking this group out of school, 4 or 5 kids, and all these other kids have to stay in school. And they're the ones upset, not really us. It's how it looks to others.
I mean, again, that's to me, it's an opportunity for the teacher to here's a way to communicate now. Here's a way to talk about it. Why don't we root on our classmates instead of saying that, why are they getting out of school? And I'm sure that those other kids play violin and do other things. I mean, like I said, it's a balance. It's a community. We've again, I don't want to get into a soapbox here. It's just we have lacked the ability to see the value of a community here over the last 10, 15 years, probably longer. Right. And it's those are so easy to create, where you can create an environment for people to work together. And this is how I'm going to spin it. Successful hockey teams do that, right? When you look at the best teams
so Lee, what we did is we would all just call in sick.
Yeah.
No. That's it, right?
What did you get? Pick one. COVID, the flu.
Yeah.
I think
COVID didn't exist back then. No one even knew what COVID was.
A little tip, hockey parents: if you are going to call in sick and go to a hockey, don't post on Twitter that you're at the Hockey Hall of Fame.
We didn't have that either.
You got to do the Ferris
Bueller. See that.
My wife's too honest.
Did that ever happen to me?
She's calling like.
But one last interesting story. We were contacted, Ellen. I'll let you share this story about doing like a podcast. When we were younger, share this with them, because this is really kind of before its time. And interesting, but go ahead, I'll let you share it.
It wasn't a podcast. It was reality TV before reality TV became famous, before Kardashians, before anything. And somebody contacted me and said, I would love to put a camera in your van while you're in the car with all your boys and do a whole reality series on it, all on conflict. And I turned around and said, my boys never fight. I'm like, no, it's not going to work out. My
Ellen
boys
and Tom
never
plus
fight.
5?
There's no conflict.
Yeah.
You would have been a YouTube sensation.
I think I would have. I think I would have, but I'm just not the type of person that could put out my family that way.
Well, luckily, we can all do it now on our own with our phones.
Yes, very true.
We can. We can.
If there's anything all this digital technology is giving us.
We can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We could have the hockey parent of the week now, and we're all just recording it. Guys, listen, that's our time. I was going to say, Mike and Christy, do you have anything else you want to add before I close?
Yes, I'm going to start the children's book, Goose and Grammy, tomorrow.
No, Gammy. It's Gammy.
Goose and Gammy.
Gooks and Gammy.
Children's
try
book
hockey
tomorrow.
My little 3, Caden, Cam's middle, calls me Gumball Gammy because I'm always bringing gumballs.
Even better.
I know. I love it.
No,
I love it.
I'm going to be honest.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank
Very
you.
inspirational and fun, and gave us a lot to really think about too.
Yeah,
I'm sure we did. Hey, Mike, I'll leave you with one last thing. I coached the Boston Icemen. I had 17 kids. 17 kids that played in the NHL from PK Zupan. Think of all the 89s. Hayes, Cam, that whole group. I literally had 17 kids on that team. We went undefeated for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I mean, as a local hockey dad and hockey person in the area, where you guys grew up with your kids, and we certainly have really enjoyed your journey and what the boys have done, and certainly what Cam's done. And I think it's it's great it's great for the area, and it's great to see him doing what he does outside the rink and off the ice. And all those great charities he's involved in, and the different business opportunities he's doing outside the game. And we talk like that's really what this podcast is, just finding letting parents and kids, and because there's so many hockey players that listen to this, and they're in the car and they're driving home and they're driving from practice, like, oh, okay, I could do a little bit of this and a little bit of this. I better get my grades up. I better maybe communicate with my teachers a little bit better. And and just understand that it's you if you love this, if you're a player and you just love this, like Cam Atkinson loved it, then you're going to find a way to get where you need to get.
Yeah.
And you're going to make sure you take care of all the things you need to take care of. And you better hope you have great parents and a support system that can help you get there. And certainly your boys have had that.
Yeah. And Mike, you know what? There's a lot of single parents as well. And that's probably even more difficult.
Yeah.
And, we've always had to work around that and help those kids and make sure that we got them to the games and we're supportive, and they had supervision and things like that. So it's more challenging as well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'll say I really hope it works out for that Johnny Quick guy you were talking about earlier.
You know what?
He's doing great.
I hope you're listening, Johnny. You're a knucklehead. You're never going to change.
3 Stanley Cups later, I think he's doing all right.
Yeah.
He lives in our town, which he's there, Stahl's there. Who else is up there, Al?
I don't know, but when Johnny Quick was a young boy coming to a game to play at the Greenwich Skating Club, his dad got a flat tire on the way, and guess who drove by, not knowing who it was, but Tom saw a man, and maybe you might have seen hockey gear in the car, but you stopped to help the kid get to the game.
Oh my gosh.
And you didn't even know it was Johnny Quick and his dad, but
we've been friends a long time.
In his Hall of Fame speech, he better say there was this one time my car.
That's
right. Yes, for sure.
And it was Tom Atkinson.
If I knew who it was, I would have made sure he never made it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have no room in the car for you.
Yeah, I can't wait to have his parents. We'll have to get his parents on the show too.
Yes.
Tom Ellen, I gotta tell you, I have loved every second of this episode, and I know the listeners will. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I just want to, before I close it out, thank you both not just for your contributions to the game in this podcast, but thanks for just being great people. I think it's so important that we share stories like this and share these these types of, like tips and tactics and the things that we do as parents, because it takes a village, right? And
it really does.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey, powered by NHL Sensory. And remember, you can listen or see all of our episodes at ourkidsplayhockey.com. For Tom and Ellen Atkinson, Mike Benelli, and Christy Casciano Burns, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.